You know, speaking as somebody who has actually bought refurbished Apple products in the past, I can say that most times it is an incredible experience because you get a product that looks almost brand new with every component that's worn out replaced, you save money, and you get a 1-year warranty directly from Apple, the company who manufactured it in the first place. But what if I told you that for $6,400, you could go on to Apple's Refurbished site and buy a Mac Pro with 12 cores, 64 gigabytes of RAM, a 1 terabyte SSD, and dual AMD graphics? Well, if you read the title, then you probably know that I'm not talking about the new Mac Pro, which starts brand new at a base price of $5,000, but instead, I'm actually talking about the trash can Mac Pro from 2013 that is actually no longer supported. Yeah, we're talking about it. Yeah, so just like every other tech YouTuber who follows Apple news, I am also going to take a moment to point and laugh at Apple for putting a 2013 maxed out Mac Pro that is obsolete on their refurbished site on their UK website for £5,149 or about $6,400 US. Because I have said before, I am a fan, not a fanboy. When they do something that I like, I will praise it. When they do stupid shit like this, I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to make fun of them, I'm going to critique it. So here we go. So like I said, this Mac Pro that they put up on the site is obsolete. It is a 2013 model. It can't even run the latest version of macOS, which I have my own problems with. I feel like of the Macs that they discontinue after a certain point, things like the Mac Pro should probably get a bit more of a life extension than something like a Mac Mini, just because the hardware inside is still very capable of most of the features, and for the things that specifically require, you know, tailor-made hardware that are now in the Apple Silicon Macs or things like that, maybe just don't have those run on the Mac Pro, but have the rest of macOS run, because those are still very capable machines. But either way, as it stands, obsolete, can't run the latest version of macOS, and it was being sold for 6,400 US Freedom Dollars, or again, 5,149 British pounds. There's so many layers to this that I'm just gonna kind of go through it as a sort of train of thought thing. And the first thing I want to bring up is that you just shouldn't ever buy one of these for that price. I would recommend maybe not even buying one at all, because in this specific configuration, it does have the 12-core Xeon chip. It is an older Xeon chip, but it's still a 12-core, pretty cool. However, it gets utterly eviscerated by the M1 Max that comes standard in a $2,000 Mac Studio. So that's kind of a kill shot there already. I've said before in other videos, I'm not a big benchmark guy, but in this case, I looked up the benchmarks of the M1 Max Mac Studio and the 12-core Xeon Mac Pro just to see what the scores were in Geekbench 5, and, well, the Mac Pro scores a 7,050 with 12 cores, and the M1 Max in the base model standard Mac Studio gets 12,235. So not quite double, but still noticeably more, just slightly noticeably more. I don't really have any complaints about like the 64 gigs of RAM or the 1 terabyte of storage. This was very clearly a very close to maxed out Mac Pro. You could put 128 gigs of RAM in this thing, but 64 is still a lot. I don't even have any systems that run 64 gigs, so kudos. Somebody actually spent a lot of money on this thing. But the other reason I say not to buy this at all is not just the software support, not just the CPU being horribly slow compared to any of the latest offerings from Apple, but it's because it comes with dual AMD D700s, and if you weren't really paying attention to what Apple was doing back when these systems came out, they were putting dual graphics cards in these, the D300, the D500, and the D700. The 500 was kind of a good balance because it didn't get crazy hot, but it was also more powerful than the D300s. But if you got the D700s, you're probably going to cook those GPUs to death because it was all cooled by a central cooling system, a little like pyramid thing that just sucked air through, and it would cool the system in theory, but you could very easily overwhelm that cooling system, and many YouTubers and other content creators did, including Unbox Therapy, if I remember correctly. So, like, remember when I said that when I've bought Apple products refurbished in the past, they were basically brand new and any worn out parts would have been replaced? They don't make the D700 GPUs anymore, at least not to my knowledge. So those have 100% not been serviced. Maybe they've had new thermal paste put on.
No.
But they have 100% not been replaced, which means that those chips are potentially ticking time bombs to just fail. And because it all runs through either one of 6 Thunderbolt ports for display output or the HDMI output, you're not going to be able to just run one GPU if the other fails. It's all or nothing. So don't buy that at all. And the other reason I'd say not to buy it is on the price. I mean, that's kind of an obvious one. So back 10 years ago when this computer came out, yes, it came out 10 years ago, and it still somehow made its way to Apple's Refurbished page, but either way, 10 years ago when it came out, this specific configuration was about $9,600. It was way, way, way overpriced for its time, and even with depreciation down to $6,400, it is still extremely overpriced. You can go on eBay and just go scrolling through and find configurations that are like base models for $500, and then find some beefed up ones for maybe $1,000, maybe $2,000 if the guy really thinks he knows what he has. But no. But if for some reason you have to get an Intel Mac, which I've actually made a video talking about one of the things that Apple Silicon doesn't have that Intel did, so you can check that out over there. But if you fall into that category and you need to buy a Mac Pro, save, can't believe I'm saying this, but save the $1,500 you would spend buying this thing refurbished and just buy a base Mac Pro, and then spend a little extra to bump some of the internal components like RAM and storage and graphics up, and maybe the processor. Don't buy this. And I already alluded to it, but another reason not to buy this thing is the age. It is 10 years old. So even if it was still supported by macOS, which I feel like it should, but it's not, even if it was still supported by macOS, it is a 10-year-old piece of equipment. I used to fall into the camp of people who would look at the old Mac Pro towers, the original cheese grater Mac Pros, and I would really envy them when they would beef these things up to be these super high performance machines for their time. And I was always just in awe at how great the performance for these machines were and how great the upgradability was. And I still think that Macs and upgradability should ideally be a thing somewhere, but I always loved that. But after a certain point, when these Mac Pros, especially the original cheese graters, started hitting that 15, 16, 17-year mark, that's where I started to kind of think, I don't think these are really machines worth buying anymore. And with the Mac Pro trash can, that hit way sooner because the only things you could upgrade were the RAM, the storage, and the CPU. The ticking time bomb GPUs, you can't replace those. So 10 years old, yeah, whether it was supported or not, I'm like, if you have one, keep it. If you don't have one, don't buy it. There are so many other offerings like the Mac Studio. Keep harping on that, but the base model Mac Studio eviscerates this thing. And it costs less to put the same amount of RAM and the same amount of storage in it. And the GPU is better. And there's one of them, and it's cooler, and it draws less power. There's so many other reasons. I'm just doing a train of thought because, Jesus Christ, don't buy this thing. But now I want to change gears from reasons not to buy it to why this thing was even available to buy in the first place. Because this is where I'm very confused. And it seems like a lot of other YouTubers have their theories, but I genuinely can't think of a reason why it made it onto the site. Because if you actually go to the spoilers, if you go to the trade-in portion of Apple's website where you trade in your Mac, the most that you can get for a trade-in is $1,200 or $1,500. I think it's $1,200 because Apple's not that nice. But either way, when you go through the entire process of saying, yes, I'm trading in this Mac Pro, and you put in the information it asks for, which isn't all the information, by the way. Like, it doesn't even ask for certain configuration details. It just has like a handful. I think the main one was like processor and storage. It doesn't even ask the RAM or the GPU. But either way, you put all that in, and like I kind of spoiled when I was getting into this section, it just tells you, hey, you can bring it on into us and we'll recycle it. What the fuck, Apple? And like them doing that doesn't really surprise me because it's not the first time I've seen Apple say that something that should really bring in some value, and if you put it on eBay, it will bring in value, is ready to be recycled. But you can actually still trade in the iPhone 7, which is also an unsupported piece of Apple hardware, and get about $60 for it if you have the iPhone 7 Plus. So you're telling me that a machine that you will charge $6,400 for, that cost over $9,000 when it was brand new, isn't even worth giving somebody a gift card to your store for? Okay, that's really dumb. But if you're only going to recycle it, how did this make it onto your page? I'm actually genuinely confused by this because I don't think, but all signs point to this being a case of, we can recycle your machine for you. They don't pay any money for it. They take the machine to recycle it, and it ends up on the webpage to be sold, which basically means that Apple sold this thing for $9,600 brand new and then cut the price not quite in half to sell it again 10 years later. That's really shitty. Again, I don't think that that's exactly what happened, and I'm not saying that as like a defense against Apple, because this whole situation is just complete and utter ridiculousness, but I just find it weird because it's not good optics to be like, hey, we'll refurbish this machine, just bring it on in, give it to us. Marquez Brownlee put it perfectly. MKBHD nailed it with the way he said that.
Or recycle it for free.
It's
for free.
It's ready to recycle.
Let us take it off your hands.
But yeah, it's just that, like, bring it on into us. We'll take it off your hands for you. And then they put it back up on their website to be resold. It's not good optics, guys. Really not. Now, I'm not exactly shy when it comes to sharing information about my collection. I collect a ton of Apple products. I have a whole channel about it called The Chaotic Collector. But for a while, I've considered buying a Mac Pro for my collection just because I've always wanted one. I think the design is actually really beautiful. I don't think it really earned the Mac Pro name, but I think that it is a beautiful piece of computer engineering. But if I were to buy one, I'd either buy one broken so that I get a really good deal on it and then potentially fix it if the GPUs weren't what failed, or I would buy a working base model or even a slightly upgraded model on literally any other site but Apple. Because like I mentioned earlier, there are way better prices in so many other places. At the end of the day, I would personally like to think that this was just a slip up on the UK Pages site. However, it really doesn't look good on Apple, and it really doesn't help their image of a greedy company when from the outside it literally looks like a company claims that they will be recycling a computer, so they take it off your hands, give you no money for it, but also don't charge for it. Can't forget that. And then turn it around and sell it for $6,500 or $6,400 on their own website. That is straight up scalper kind of moves there. And I mean, I don't think Apple really needs to go scalping people just because, you know, they seem to be doing kind of all right money-wise. I could be wrong, but it's just not a good look from the outside in. Either way, that's been it. Don't buy that machine. I don't think you even can at this point. And if you're in the US, it wasn't even available on their US page, but don't buy it. But that's been it. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy content like this. I got new videos coming out every Friday. I also have a few more channels going on now. I've got the Chaotic Collector, which is going through a bit of a revival right now where we're making a bunch more shorts that are going to go up on there. And I just launched my covers and commentary channel, so you can go check that out. There'll be a link in the description if you like commentary on music or you like drum covers, vocals, music, all that kind of stuff. Either way, thank you all so much for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next video. Make sure to be there and have a good one.